Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to our Sabbath service with congregation Beit Tikva. Hope you're comfortable at home. We invite you to participate, sing with us, read from the prayer book. I hope you have a prayer book at home. If not, come over to Beit Tikva and borrow a siddur from us. Thanks to the beautiful music of Alma and Dankoff and Jolene Gear at the piano, and Lela Dawkins, who is videographing the service. That's a new word in the English language. So let's sing together. Ma yafeh hayom. How beautiful is this day. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We're in the middle of page 128 in your siddur. Page 128. Towards the back of the prayer book, all the way to page 645, the beautiful melody of Lechilach, based on the words from the book of Genesis when God tells Abram to go forth to a new land. Top of page 645. To the blessing over the Shabbat candles in your siddur. The words begin in the middle of page 121, and then we'll sing together the blessing. We don't light the candles now because we're actually recording in the morning, but please, by 7:30 Friday night, you should light your Shabbat candles. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu leha Let's turn a few pages and we'll read together in the middle of 126, page 126. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics and no services, but I need them. Through prayer I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. So we turn to the Psalms. There are 6 special Psalms that we recite, that we sing on Friday night as a welcoming to the 7th day, to the Sabbath day. We always begin in the prayer book with Psalm 95. The words are on page 130. L'chu naranana. Together at the bottom of the page, we'll read together in English. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come to God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hands are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea, God made it, and the land which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel, bend the knee before Adonai our Maker, for Adonai is our God, and we are the people God tends, the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge this day. Let's continue with an excerpt from Psalm 97. The words are on top of page 133. Adonai is sovereign. Let the earth exult and the many islands rejoice. Dense clouds are around God. Righteousness and justice are the base of God's throne. O you who love Adonai, hate evil. God guards the lives of God's loyal ones, saving them from the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. O you righteous, rejoice in Adonai, and claim God's holy name. So we turn to the beautiful melody of Lecha Dodi. We're on page 138 in our Siddur, in our prayer book. And our tradition, our minhag, in this congregation is to always sing the first, the second, and the 9th verse. And if you're comfortable, if you're able at home, for the 9th verse, B'O'i v'Shalom, you should stand up and face east. Let's turn to the words of the Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish as it's known. We're on page 144 in our Siddurim, and we'll chant together a cappella. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba, Yamagid Malchutei, Yamik Malchutei, B'chayechon, U'byomechon, U'chayech Kol Beit Yisrael. Agala, Agala, U'rizman Karim. Rabba Mevora, Leolam Yomel Maya, Yipara, Yishmara, Yishmar Vitromam Lidnase, Yitara, Yitale, Yitala, Shemei Kudushan, Mikol Birchata, Shirata, Tushbechata, Nechemata, Damiran B'yama, Yiburu, Amen. Let's turn the page and we begin the prayers that lead to the Shema Yisrael, beginning with the Baruch Hu, the call to worship. We're on 146. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamorah, Baruch Adonai Hamorah, Le'olam Va'ed. Together, the first blessing in English, we're on 148. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Sabaoth is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim. We turn the page, and we're reading together the second blessing on page 150. Everlasting love you offer your people Israel, by teaching us Torah, mitzvot, laws, and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Together we sing the Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. And you're all welcome to sit down and relax as we continue with the Ve'ahavta from the words of Deuteronomy. We're on page 154. Together in the Hebrew and then in the English. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'divarta bam V'shivtecha b'beitecha, v'lechtecha b'derech, v'shachtecha v'kumecha, v'kshartam le'ot al yadecha, v'ayu letotafot bein einecha, v'ktabtam al mezuzot beitecha, v'visharecha. V'man tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'yitem kedoshim le'lohechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem, me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, emet. Together you shall love Adonai your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon the children of your children. Recite them when you stay at home, when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments, and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem emet. So we turn to the words of Mi Chamocha from the book of Exodus. We're on page 158 in our prayer books. So we now have a wonderful duet by Alma and Wendy on the flute for the music of Hashki Vena, this beautiful prayer that we say Friday night to ask God to protect us and watch over us in the evening hours. In the Hebrew and English, the words are on page 160. let's turn the page to 162, and with our musicians, we're going to sing together the Vishamru, also words from the book of Exodus, chapter 31. We're on the top of page 162. To the seven essential prayers, the seven blessings of the Tefillah, which begin with words from the psalmist on page 164. If you're able, please rise and we'll sing together. If not, just relax and stay in your comfortable chair or couch. And we begin with Psalm 51. Adonai Atatita Ufi Agiti Lakecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Mimotenu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Elohei Gadol HaGibor HaNorah, Elohei Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, Ve'odei Hamor, Ve'zoker Chaseavot Imahot, U'mei Gulam Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo V'Ahava, Melech Hoseu Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Moedei Avraham V'Yatzorah. Page 168. Atani Bola Alma Dankoff, Nekaye Hakol Zara Leoshia, Mitakel Hayim Mechesed, Nekaye Hakol Beratamim Rabim. So make no flint, Verofer Folim, Umatir Asulim, Umekaye Emunato, 171. This is a metaphorical rendering of the third blessing for the holiness of the divine name. Days pass and years vanish. We walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed. And we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. So the fourth blessing, we're on page 173, reading together in English. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. We're ready to sing Shalom Rav with all of our viewers. Page 178 in the Siddur, a blessing of peace for the house of Israel. Take a few moments for our own personal meditations and prayers. So we are about to begin, or we shall begin today, this new month of Elul, the month preceding Rosh Hashanah, a time of prayer, repentance, and self-examination. And I think it's a good time to consider our world, our economy, and all the goodies that we enjoy in this American economy. How much comfort we've experienced over the years, and suddenly some of us feel upended and the stability of our lives somewhat shaken and shattered. The power of the American enterprise is extraordinary. Everyone around the world has always looked to us as a paragon of success. And yet no country, no nation, no tribe always is going uphill. Sometimes we have our depressions. Sometimes we reach towards the nadir. So I think this month is a good time to not only think about ourselves and consider what we have and how much we have to be grateful for what we do enjoy, but also to remember there's so many other folks out there in need, so many people who need a job, so many people worried about covering their rent or their mortgage. How can we help others? How can we do something really positive to help other human beings? So we've learned from the tradition and from popular culture that you can never be too rich or too thin, right? Of course, we know that we can be too thin. There are all kinds of illnesses associated with that. I don't know about being too rich, although looking around at some of the leaders in this world who are way too rich, wonder what goodness is there that is part of that richness. Think about wealth, because wealth is an idea that is embedded in this incredible Torah portion called Shoftim. Is it really possible to be too wealthy? Is it possible to have too much? I think it is. I mean, you and I can think of examples in the newscasts of the last 6 months of people with way, way too much largesse who have managed to ruin their lives or ruin the lives of many others. And yet, if you and I had an extra million or two, that wouldn't be so bad, right? We could sustain this congregation without any problems. You know, we might need another car, or we might need another vacation, who knows, except that we can't go anywhere this day. But someday we'll be able to travel again. I mean, the possibilities are endless suddenly when you have 7 figures in your savings account. Today's Torah portion says very clearly that having too much wealth is a danger. It all has to do in chapter 17 of Deuteronomy with the notion of wanting to embrace a king. In other words, when Moses is speaking this sermon, he's talking to the Jewish people about the future. He's the prophet. There's no such thing as a monarchy, but he envisions, he sees into the future and says, I know really that in some years ahead, whether it be 100 or 300 years from now, you, the Jewish people, will want to appoint a king to lead you. And he has great trepidation about that. He says the following: the king shall keep too many horses and send people back to Egypt to add to the horses and to his houses. And he shall have too many wives, and thus his heart shall go astray. And thus the king will amass silver and gold to excess. Very specific sentences in chapter 17. So apparently, according to Torah, it is very possible to amass too much in the way of riches. God is concerned with the king becoming preoccupied with the notion of wealth, and thus his possessions would determine his or her agenda for the Jewish people. You know that in the ancient world, the Jewish community was technically something like a democracy, which is pretty unusual given the way things were 3,000 years ago. After leaving Egypt, what did the Israelites do? They built a new society, but what they built actually was a system of laws. They built a system of laws which meant that every all the laws applied equally to every person within the society. In other words, there was no aristocracy, there was no nobility, there were no monarchs. We didn't have kings until the middle of the 9th century BCE. It was an egalitarian way of living. It wasn't exactly a representative democracy as you and I have it in America, but it was something like a democracy. In the eyes of God, every person was equal. In the scope of justice, every person stood equally before the judge in the court of law. And that's also a special part of this Torah portion, which speaks of the centrality of justice. Tzedek tzedek tirdov. Real justice shall you apply to every citizen in the country. After about 250 years, the people got tired of democracy, and they started to demand that they shall be like all other nations. Therefore, what did they want? They wanted a king. They wanted a king because they thought a king would protect them against the Assyrians of the north, the Akkadians, all of the other armies, the Sennacherib's army in the 700s BCE. They thought a king with an army and with chariots and horses and so forth would be a way of protecting the integrity of the little Jewish nation. But kings meant problems. Kings meant slaves, more wives, more money, more palaces, etc. And the Torah has an antidote to all of that. The Torah says, in this portion, what is the king's responsibility? The king, when he sits on his royal throne, shall have a copy of the teaching, literally, Sefer HaTorah, written for him specifically by the Levitical priests. In other words, he'll have his own private copy of the Torah scroll. Let it remain with him, let him read it every day of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord as God, to observe faithfully every word of this teaching. Teaching means Torah, and all of the laws. Thus he will not act haughtily towards his fellow citizens, nor deviate from the instruction from the Torah given to him by God. So that's the anodyne, that's the antidote to all this wealth. That if the king is really a decent king and understands what his true responsibility is, his scribes will have parchment, will have that Sefer Torah right there in his private room so he can study and understand what it is that he truly needs to do. Rather than focus on wealth, you and I should focus on Torah. That's why actually the tradition says, let every person make of himself, of herself, like a Torah. In other words, we should embody or become like a Torah scroll in our own lives. Put aside all the desire for material stuff and remember what's really important. Ironically, if you think about it, when you and I are striving for wealth, no amount of money is ever enough. No amount of money. Insatiable needs can never be satisfied. And you and I see that all the time when we watch the news. If we have enough to sustain ourselves, to take care of our families, to do some good deeds for other human beings, to literally lift up our own morality, that's really enough. The tradition says, who's the rich person? Who is truly rich? One who is content with his or her own lot. Hasamech b'chelko. If you're happy, if you're content with the way things are with your own lot, with your own life, that's richness. Richness is not having 3 or 4 cars in the garage. So this Sabbath, think about what it means to be content, what it means to have enough. Remember the story of Deuteronomy, the story of kings, and all the dangers of being a leader, all the dangers of acquiring too much, whether you're a little fish in a big pond or a big fish in a little pond. All of us can find contentment within our own lives. Shabbat Shalom. So we'd like to sing the prayer for healing for everyone that we're thinking of this Sabbath. Many of our congregants who are recovering and getting stronger these days. During this past week, Doreen Hertig, Lynn Kelly, Melanie Hornstein, Flo Vinnick. I'm sure there are others. Or do you have Cantor Ephraim, our beloved Cantor.
Jim Taylor.
So let's turn in our prayer books to page 371 and sing together. The words are in the middle of the page. Misha Perach. Thank you again to Alma and Wendy and Jolene for our beautiful music, and of course to Lela for recording this service. So let's continue with the closing prayers for this Shabbat. We're on page 586 in the prayer book, 586. On the lower portion of the page are the words for the Aleinu. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, lateinu la'atzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzon, v'lo samanu kimishpachot adama, shelo samanu keganem, v'gol aleinu kekol amonam, v'anavnu korim, v'mishtakavim, v'modim, l'ifnei melech, mochei hamachim, hakadosh baruch hu. V'ne'emar b'chai Adonai, l'melech kol haaretz, hayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Let's read from the beautiful Psalm 16 for a moment before we come to the Kaddish prayer. The words are on 578, page 578. I am ever mindful of Adonai's presence. God is at my right hand. I shall never be shaken. So my heart rejoices, my whole being exalts, and my body rests secure. For you will not abandon me to Sheol, or let your faithful one see the pit. You will teach me the path of life. In your presence is perfect joy. Delights are ever in your right hand. These words are, of called Shiviti from the first verb in the opening sentence, and Shiviti is also recited at the Yizkor service on Yom Kippur, late Yom Kippur afternoon. This Sabbath, with love and devotion, we remember our beloved members and friends of this congregation. This being their yahrzeit week, we recall now with love and affection the following names. Alex Duno, son of Carlos and Barbara Duno. Alice Lee, friend of Marilyn Cohen. Jenny Lee, friend of Marilyn Cohen. Jules Levine, husband of Sandy Levine. Beverly Travis, aunt of Sheila and Norton Bickle. Martha Wilson, sister of Mark Sanders. Are there any other yahrzeits for this Shema? Let's turn to the words of the Kaddish. We're on page 598 and we'll read together 598. Yitkagal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba v'alma divrach v'yirteh v'amlich malchuteh v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael v'agalav b'zman kariv v'imru amen Yehei shemei Rabba mevarach le'olam amen Yitbarach v'yishlach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei v'kedusha v'richu Lela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata gamiran b'alma v'imru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemayim v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the Holy One who creates peace on high bring us peace to our world.
Oseh shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael.
Let's conclude our service with the words of the Kiddush, the sanctification for the Sabbath day. We're on 123 in the prayer book for the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'ofen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzah banu, v'shabbat kadsho v'yahar ma'os ratzah inchilanu, zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit, kilu yom tekilah le'mikra'ei kodesh, zecher l'tzion Mitzrayim, Givanu v'avata, Deltanu v'yasha, Mikol ha'olamim, v'shabbat koshecha, v'yavaru ratzon, imchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom.